Yeah, I put this Bible reading plan based on Catholic Bible chapters and verses. Ultimately, because I think that all Christians benefit from reading through the whole Bible, but I also don't think that Bible in a year necessarily gives enough time to meditate on all the readings, right? We're probably better off reading one chapter from the Old Testament and one from the New. Well, just figuring out how many chapters there are. That means that we get to read the New Testament twice. The New Testament with the Gospels twice. The 4 Gospels you can read twice in 1 year, and that's on 349 days of the year. That leaves you some times to miss. You get a couple more each year in the Old Testament. So year 1, if we do one chapter, right, we're looking at 3 years for the Old Testament. Genesis plus the wisdom books, that's 363 chapters. Leaves you 2 days of not reading through the year, but you can double up easily when you have only one. But with the ideal being one a day, giving you the chance to really think about that chapter and what it means in your life, what it means for the world, for your community, for your family, for your salvation, for the direction of the universe. Okay, so like the books in the wisdom books, so Genesis has 50 chapters. The wisdom books in Catholic Bibles includes Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, Wisdom, and Sirach. In year 2, you do Exodus plus the historical books, and that's 356 days. Leaves you a little more wiggle room. The historical books in Catholic Bibles are Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Tobit, Judith, Esther, 1 Maccabees, and 2 Maccabees. And then year 3, you have Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and the Prophets, and that's a total of 358. That gives you 7 days to wiggle room. Again, you're still doing the New Testament with the Gospels twice. So the prophets in Catholic Bibles are Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Baruch, Ezekiel, Daniel. If I'm right, the Masoretic tradition does not include some of the books from Daniel that were in Greek, but does include the ones that are in Aramaic originally and not in Hebrew. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And some of those are quite short. Of course, the Roman Catholic Bible, right, which is the Catholic Bible that's used by the 14 different rites connected with the Catholic Church, including some Eastern churches as well. And the Bible includes those things that are in the Septuagint, right? The books that are in the Septuagint, which was translated from the Hebrew a century or two before Jesus' life, right? And that's considered, one translation tradition. Of course, the Masoretic tradition dates back to the 8th century AD, right? So 800 years after Jesus. But we know also historically they think that goes back as well as a separate translation tradition. And so the Jewish translation traditions, we know of at least a third because of 1940s, whenever they discovered the books in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right, in those caves. During the Roman occupation, the Essenes were collecting all the books they can, and some of those point directly to the Masoretic tradition, others point to Hebrew versions of the Septuagint that we didn't even know existed, right? So we'd have Hebrew, the Hebrew original of much of the Maccabees, for instance, now, and Sirach, right? Maybe other ones too, right? There's some fragments, and they're still finding things because it's actually multiple caves, right? So a lot of work, and then you have to have people that are actually analyzing these. So both of those traditions are pointed to, plus additional traditions. And if we think about it just logically, right, translating in the ancient world, it would have been a group of people. If we think about I guess we're aware enough of monasteries, right? So if you pictured, if all technology were gone, you have a group of Benedictines in that monastery in Latrobe, they would be writing and keeping the Bible, right? And then you'd have a monastery, in Loretto, right? The Franciscans would be doing the same thing. And even though they're pretty close to each other, in a less technologically developed world, they might not have any contact with each other, or very little. Definitely not enough contact to sit there and double check each other's work, right? And then additionally, imagine there's also, across the sea, and this is the situation it was, transport, people did move and people did travel, and merchants did, but not everybody did, right? Up until very recently, most people lived within 10-mile radius of their homes, right? So, but all of these translation traditions were made by faithful people, faithful Jews and faithful Christians, trying to keep alive the written tradition that they received. And so the Masoretics lost a few books. That might happen, or maybe they never had them, right? Maybe those Hebrew books were part of another tradition, right? While the sacrifice was centered in Judah, right? The book was important in every synagogue. Synagogues still exist. We don't really have the central temple anymore, except for in the Catholic Church, which has kept the tradition of the Melchizedek priesthood, right? But the temple sacrifice, other than that is described in the Bible. So I guess it's a difference, right, between Christians and many other religions that have scriptures, right? We don't worship the scriptures themselves. The translation matters, right? But ultimately, it's a way for God to speak to us. So that's my Catholic 3-year Bible reading plan. The big part is the Old Testament part of it, right? Because you want to be able to get through the whole Old Testament, but you also want to be able to do other things, right? If you're inspired to go and read Jonah a lot, you want to be able to do that. You're inspired for a while and you need some Psalms, right? You spend even 5 or 6 Psalms and you spend a lot of time with those, right? You get a lot out of that. You've got to follow your desires as well. So if you structure yourself a reading plan that keeps you on task in times whenever that are just normal, right? Mundane times. If it's a simple enough structure that allows you to dive more deeply into the things that you need as you live this life, that only God knows what's happening next. Have a great day.